Damian Lillard back to the Blazers? Is this the most surprising move of the offseason? Plus more for Summer League and on Jonathan Kuminga's free agency. It's Locked On NBA Game Night. Let's go.
When that final buzzer rings, you know it's time for Locked On NBA Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. It's the true NBA fans' one stop for all the action. Every game, every night. It's Locked On NBA Game Night. Tipping off now.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA Game Night. Every game, every night, even in the offseason here on Fridays. I'm your co-host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, and the host of the Locked On Pelicans podcast.
And I'm John Karalis, at John_Karalis on Twitter, host of the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. And of course, thank you for making Locked On NBA Game Night your first listen. Today and every day, we are here 7 days a week covering Summer League and the biggest stories around the association. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So let's get into not Summer League, John, the bigger news of Damian Lillard returning to the Portland Trail Blazers, the prodigal son here, it feels like. 3 years, $41 million. So it sounds like that comes to about $14 million a year. So that's about the non-taxpayer mid-level exception, I'm assuming, is what that comes down to. We're going to jump into it. I want to jump into real or fake right off the bat. Let's hit the theme.
Is this real or fake? Just ask John and Jake.
John, real or fake? Damian Lillard returning to the Portland Trail Blazers is more surprising than the Milwaukee Bucks stretching and waving him in the first place.
I'm going to say, oh God, it's so close. I'm going to say
this one's one of the toughest real or fakes I think we've ever done.
It's tough because waving and stretching him is a really dumb, surprising move. But I think the return probably tops it. I can throw a third element in there. Him getting a contract with $14 million a year. The contract that he got, is that more surprising? Like that's also in the mix.
Like, why wouldn't he just go for the minimum? The Bucks got to pay him no matter what.
Right. Like, why would you do that? But I mean, I don't know why Portland, did that. I'm sure there's something there that, allows that. I don't know. I don't care. Dame's back in Portland. I do think it's more surprising that he went back there. I just thought like youth movement, all of that stuff, be very interesting to see how they, what exactly they're trying to do with this team, with this mix of young players. And now you have Jrue Holiday, you have Damian Lillard. That's another weird element of like the guy that you traded for each other, and now you have them both. It's minus a championship.
Things about this that are just like very, very bizarre and very, very strange,
wild.
Right?
I don't understand it. Maybe I kind of spoke it into existence in a weird way because I've been binging Portlandia for the past few days.
This is all you.
So this is all just me just getting into that Portland mindset. And all of a sudden it's like, hey, speaking of Portland, here's Dame Lillard back home. I love it. I love that he's back there. That's where he belongs. He always looked weird in the Bucks uniform. I'm glad that he gets to go back and somehow end his career there. So I'm happy that he's back. I think it's a nice little story.
Oh, it's awesome. Like, it's a homecoming. Like, this is just feel good vibes all around. Like, everybody's happy, hugs everywhere when it comes to this sort of thing. Look, I'm going to say it's real that it's more surprising than the Bucks stretching and waving him. They were kind of desperate around Giannis, and that's a desperate move to eat more dead money than we've ever seen. At least I kind of understand that. And look, I get why Dame is going back to Portland. He's got an incredible bond with that city. The fans are going to love it. His family's still there. That clearly matters to him too.
Yeah.
I just assumed he'd kind of ring chase, maybe a team would sign him and then he'd kind of work out and get healthy and then kind of come back for a ring the next year. I don't see Portland as being like a true title contender in the next couple of years. So this is more like, I don't want to call it like an extended retirement tour because it's not exactly that. He's there to mentor a bunch of the young guys that they have. I think that's going to be great for them. But this isn't the type of move, at least right now, that like vaults them up. Who knows what Lillard's going to look like when he comes back from this injury. It's just a happy move, but like a weird move, right? Is that the best way to put it? Like,
I think from a basketball perspective, it's weird. I think we might just have to like look at quality of life in this scenario. I think that's just that might just be what it boils down to, where it's not the money because he was getting his money, right? It's not like he was getting his money. He's, his family, I think the family being away from his family, I think was a big problem for him in Milwaukee.
Big time.
I don't think that's a big secret out there. Going back to Portland where he feels comfortable, going back to, being with his family. I just feel like that trumps let me go to Milwaukee. Let me see. Well, maybe Cleveland. Let me go see what, the Thunder are doing, or
right?
Miami, like all of these. Pick a contending team. Do you really want to be that guy? That I just feel like there's a level of pride with Damian Lillard where he's like, you know what? Either I'm going to be on a team that wins a championship or not. I'm not going to sacrifice my family and my happiness to do that and just bounce all over the country. I think there's a level of respect that goes with that. Like this is the team, and it has no stain on your legacy, in my opinion, because I think too many people were like, oh, well, you didn't get a ring. Like, well, he got so much out of these Portland teams that, okay, it's not his fault that the teams around him weren't good enough. He certainly raised everybody's level. So I feel like this is more a quality of life thing than anything, which I have a ton of respect for. We always use basketball terms, and I don't think that's really at the heart of this.
No, you make a really good point there, because in this, he has a no trade clause. He's one of two people now, him and LeBron James, now that Bradley Beal is gone from the Phoenix Suns. Clearly him negotiating a no trade clause into this was like, I want to retire in Portland. I don't want to move again. I don't want to be anywhere else, right? There's no reason to fight hard for that sort of thing in this, and he got it, and they gave it to him knowing that that's probably the stuff that matters to him more than a title, and that quality of life and just what you want out of your career and in your life. There's something to be said for that. And I think you make a really good point of like, we should respect that sort of thing. Everyone's kind of all about ring cultures, but this is a job and other things do matter for, around it too, right? Like, I like spending time with my family as well. And I bet Damian Lillard does. And when you can't do that, it drags on you a little bit. Going back to Milwaukee here, how are we going to view his tenure there?
I think people are going to forget about his tenure in Milwaukee.
Yeah, right. Like nothing.
It's going to be like, oh yeah, that's right. That's right. Because he's going to have like these bookends when it comes time for his Hall of Fame induction. It's going to be almost exclusively Portland highlights. You're going to mix in.
He will be in the Hall of Fame. There's no question about that.
Of course he will. There's no doubt about that. I don't think anybody would seriously question.
I'm just making sure everyone knows.
I mean, yeah. So I would hope. So yeah, it was what it was. I think it was a failed experiment. Obviously it didn't work. I think the defensive stuff was a problem. I think his impact on the defense was too much to handle, but it wasn't the only thing because they had defensive issues behind him. But it was obvious that mix, that let's rely on the offense and Giannis to kind of raise the level. It just wasn't enough. Plus, you had injuries and all of that stuff, obviously. So it really is. It's a forgettable tenure for him in Milwaukee.
It's just nothing, right?
Yeah. It's going to be when he's, 60 years old and somebody shows a picture of him, on a broadcast, be like, hey, remember when you were in Milwaukee? And people can go, oh, right. he had those 2 years there. It's like how people forget, like
you see that picture of him in the jersey and be like, oh my goodness, I forgot about that.
Right. Like putting up a picture of Hakeem Olajuwon in a Toronto Raptors jersey, you go, oh, that's right. Or Patrick Ewing in a Sonics jersey. You're like, this does not make any sense whatsoever. So he'll be remembered as a Blazer. I'm glad he gets to go out as a Blazer. That's, to me, it's sometimes things actually go right. And I'd never even considered the possibility, but I'm glad.
No, not at all. Like, this was not a team I would have thought about at all. Again, we've said it in the beginning. The basketball fits weird. Everything else makes sense. Everything else makes sense. The basketball side, somewhat sense, but not the most sense here. But look, we're happy for Damian Lillard. It's a really cool story. Everybody's happy about this sort of situation here. So coming up next, let's shift gears to Summer League. There's a game between the Miami Heat and the Detroit Pistons that I found really fascinating. We'll tell you why. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On NBA Game Night. Today's episode of Locked On NBA Game Night is brought to you by Game Time. We've all been there, logging on early, waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping, and that's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever, and prices actually drop the closer it gets to showtime. You can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. If you're going to a new venue, you want to make sure you're getting the seats you want. They've got panoramic seat views, so there are no surprises. And with Game Time, the price is what you see is what you pay. There are no hidden fees there. Look, I just used them to go buy some Dodger tickets to go see Shohei Ohtani pitch, which was really cool. Bottom last minute, it was a great deal. Game Time is my go-to ticketing app for that reason. So take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. And thank you for making a Locked On NBA Game Night your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Monday covering everything you want to know about the association, whether it's Summer League or the biggest stories. So make sure Locked On NBA Game Night is your first listen today. I'm making Locked On Blazers my second listen today.
Oh, yeah.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Mike Richmond, pass first point guard, is excited to get his point guard back. I'm excited to go listen to Locked On Blazers as my second listen. So let's shift gears to Summer League, and I want to look at three teams in the Eastern Conference here when it comes to it, and in particular, the game between the Detroit Pistons and the Miami Heat. Detroit winning 108-88, but let's focus on a player. This is going to sound weird, that didn't actually play in this game. Let's go over to Kuka Hill from Locked On Pistons.
The Detroit Pistons wrapped up their last of 4 Summer League games with a convincing win over the Miami Heat in the Summer League. Host of Locked On Pistons podcast, Kuka Hill here. Biggest story from this game is that Ron Holland did not play in this game. Played really well throughout the first 3 games, averaged around 21 points a game, shot above 45% from 3, over 50% from the field. The shot looked vastly improved. Hopefully that actually carries over to the NBA. But Ron Holland convinced and showed everybody that he didn't really deserve to be there. He's too good. Looked great. Looked like the NBA player you want him to look like. That was the biggest story from the game. Bobby Klitman had a good game. It was good to see him finally put together like a good scoring game where you could kind of see the glimpses of how he can become an NBA player. It was good he was able to end it off with that. Chaz Lanier did not have a good Summer League. Struggled in this game, 2 of 10 from the field. Just did not shoot the ball very well. Did not look comfortable on the floor. Pretty concerning to me. And Dan Shankins wraps it up with a double-double. I thought he was very impressive during this time. Him and Ron Holland the most impressive, but there it goes from Summer League.
So he was talking about Ron Holland there, and I found that really interesting because Holland has a pretty high ceiling, in my opinion, and he looked tremendous in their first 3 Summer League games. And when we look at the Eastern Conference, John, and you cover the Celtics here, look, there's some good teams in there that we think are going to be at the top, but it does feel a little bit wide open. And it feels like the Pistons, if they get this kind of internal development, they didn't make the big splashy move in trades or free agency that they could have. They're banking on guys like Ron Holland taking a step forward, a Sir Thompson taking a step forward, Cade Cunningham getting even better. You know, when you look at that team, what do you feel the ceiling for them could be in the East if they get that kind of development from guys?
It's hard to say, but I do think it's pretty high. I mean, I don't think it's a top seed, but could they sneak in and steal home court somewhere? I mean, they were 44 win team last year with a lot of room to grow. So I don't know, like, could they be the next version of the Pacers in a way where you get to 50 wins and get a top 4 seed? It's not another question. A 6-game improvement for the Pistons with, I think, obviously everything centers around Cade Cunningham, but you get that improvement from these guys that you mentioned, Jalen Duren. There's a lot of talent on there. And they got
just starting their ascent. It feels like, right? Like, it doesn't feel like anyone has peaked at all with that team.
And you added some shooting, get Duncan Robinson on the Pistons now. So you've added some talent. You've added some, a need. And Holland, look, Summer League, he's played great. This is my
Summer League.
My maxim for Summer League is that success, a failure is more meaningful than success. So he has proven he's an NBA player. A legitimate NBA player is supposed to dominate this Summer League talent, right? But it doesn't mean that you're going to be a good NBA player. It just means that you're better than all of these guys, the rookies, the guys trying to hang on, the guys trying to come back into the league, the international guys. Although, so that's a good sign for the Pistons. Excuse me, with my Greek speaking with my hands, knocking my mic over. The good news is that Holland has proven, okay, you're an NBA level player. You've played great against lesser competition. Now carry that confidence into the preseason. Now we got to see, does that translate into playing next to your teammates, playing next to Cade and Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren and all those guys? Can you supplant Tobias Harris? Can you become a starter? Can you win that spot? That's the next step. They do have, I think, the potential to grab a top 4 seed. I've liked the Pistons for like their tenacity for a few years now. They've always played the Celtics hard and played them well, even in tough losses. So I think with the Celtics demise, at least for this upcoming season, there's a spot up at the top in the top 3 or 4, and the Pistons can absolutely, Kuka Hill is going to go into this season with a legitimate stake on his podcast saying, this is a top 4. This is a first round home court team.
Look, after what he went through 2 years ago, I would love that for him.
He deserves
in the 27-28 straight losses. He deserves it here. All right, let's switch gears to the Miami Heat a little bit, because they're an interesting team in the East that could rise to the top, but it might depend on a rookie. Let's go over to Wes Goldberg of Locked On Heat for a little bit more.
Well, the Heat lose to the Pistons in their second to last game of Summer League. Not all that surprising, given that Kalal Ware, Pelle Larsson, and Kashad Johnson did not play, Miami's 3 best Summer League players. But the story of the game was Kasparus Yakonis. At least all eyes were going to be on him with all of those guys out. He bounced back after a rough first half, had a pretty good second half, finished with 15 points, a couple of steals, made a 3-pointer in the second half. It was an up-and-down game for Kaz, though, just like it's been for most of Summer League so far. The good looks really promising, right? But the bad is pretty frustrating. Some bad pass turnovers, drives without much of a plan, bricked shots. But when it's working, he's throwing slick passes, he's getting guys involved, he's pushing the pace, he's shooting with confidence. Even though he fell to 20 in the draft, it's fair to call him a work in progress.
He's an interesting player. That was someone that, you had heard a lot of talk about potentially going in the lottery, ended up falling, into the 20s there. But the Miami Heat feel like they need something this year, right? When you look at that team compared to a team like the Pistons, right? Like, I don't feel great about the Miami Heat, especially after losing Jimmy Butler and not getting kind of the big move that we would expect for him, whether it was Kevin Durant or someone else. They need someone like Jakucionis to take a step forward, but it just doesn't feel like they have that guy to me.
No, you can't put that kind of pressure on this kid to come in and be like, okay,
well, you can. He just won't live up to it.
Well, no, you can't. You can if you want to ruin this kid. I just talked about how the success is, a true NBA player should come into summer league and play well. Okay. So, Jakucionis is up and down. He's had like really one good game. But like Wes said, it's what's translatable. You're also looking for the skill, the mentality, not necessarily just the performance, the numbers, but how are you playing? Because you're playing with a bunch of guys that you're never going to be teammates with. You've had 3 practices with them, so I'm not going to kill the kid for not having, like, he's a passer, and you got to have some chemistry with your teammates. You have to know where they're going. You have
It's
to know where they're
really
gonna
tough
be.
as a point guard.
It's like the hardest thing. I've always joked that a point guard at summer league is kind of like a dance instructor of 8-year-olds. You ever watch an 8-year-old dance recital? No one is paying attention to what they're supposed to do. Everybody's off in their own little world. And the instructors are, no, go twirl this way. No, you're supposed to go. No, you pick this person up and go here. Like, that's what a point guard is trying to do at summer league. So it's tough. You have to have practices. You have to have chemistry. You have to know when somebody's going to cut, because you miss the pass when you're like, oh, he did it. Okay, great. And it's just a little late. So as long as he's displaying the skills, displaying the vision, it's like the right reads, you got to give him time. Yeah, Wes is right. He is a work in progress. Miami should let him be a work in progress.
Yeah, I think that's the move. I think they need to kind of recalibrate their expectations going into
admit
next
where
year.
You are, Miami. Just admit where you are.
Yeah, that's what it is, right? This is a team that feels they should be competing for titles, and it's like they're to me nowhere
there.
close.
You're not there.
A team that wants to get into that group, let's save it for the next segment, is the Atlanta Hawks. I really want to touch on them, and let's get into a little bit of restricted free agency talk that's coming up here next in today's episode of. Look, man, it's kind of crazy out there. Coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On NBA Game Night. Today's episode of Locked On NBA Game Night is brought to you by OpenPhone. If you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. So think about the last time you had an urgent need. Was it a plumber or something else? So the first person didn't answer, you didn't wait, right? Look, the other day, I work on my cars, but I kind of got stuck and needed a mechanic. Called one, didn't answer. Called another one, didn't answer. Got the third guy, that's who got the business. That's why you need OpenPhone. OpenPhone is the #1 business phone system built to streamline and scale your customer communications, all from an app on your phone or computer. So OpenPhone is going to let you manage business calls and texts from a single app. Their shared inbox is a game changer. You can jump into any conversation instantly without missing a beat. And their AI agent handles after-hours calls, answers common questions, and captures leads so you never miss a customer. So OpenPhone is offering Locked On NBA listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. That's OPENPHONE.com/LockedOnNBA. And if you have an existing number with another service, OpenPhone will port them over at no extra charge. OpenPhone, no missed calls, no missed customers. And thank you for making a Locked On NBA Game Night your first listen today and every day. We're here every single day of the week covering the biggest stories and summer league games around the association. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Comment down below. What do you think about the Miami Heat? What about the Detroit Pistons and Damian Lillard's reunion with the Portland Trail Blazers as well here? So I want to touch on one more summer league thing here, John, and that's the Atlanta Hawks. By the way, go ahead, undefeated so far, 92-88 over the Memphis Grizzlies. That's a team in the East, too, that's looking to kind of take that step forward, and they made some big splashy moves, Nickeil Alexander-Walker in the offseason as well. But they're looking for some internal development and growth from some of their young guys, too, to fill out the depth. And they also have a rookie in Asa Newell, who seems to be like the kind of perfect rim protecting 3-point shooting big that kind of every team needs. You know, Kobe Buffkin has played pretty well in summer league as well. I think that's a team that if they get some of that lower end depth, feels like they could take a pretty big step forward in the East. You're muted, John.
I'm muted. They got Kristaps Porzingis, and so they're trying to build some.
Oh, that's what I forgot there too. Yeah.
So this is like with both of these guys, now you have like you can start to play like a similar style. I don't know how much the rookie, like how much you're going to be able to count on a rookie, but at least you can say, okay, watch Porzingis, watch him.
He's
What
got a
does
clearly
Jonathan-
defined role then, which is so important for rookies, I think.
Absolutely. And then, you have a championship, you have championship experience with Porzingis, who has also, like, Porzingis has picked up tips from Al Horford, former Atlanta Hawks star, and stretch big type of thing. So he's got a lot of lineage to learn from in Atlanta. Atlanta's in a position, right? They're right there. They're trying to be what we just said with the Pistons, with a few little tweaks, a few little moves, but they have I think they might have like the biggest gap between floor and ceiling, Atlanta. And I'm a noted Trae Young hater, so
you in fact are.
I'm card carrying. So, but this is going to be the exact type of team that he should thrive on, right? He doesn't have to be the number one option scoring wise. He can be more of a distributor. He doesn't have to be the 30-point a game guy, right? So you have more options. You have guys, and you have your centers now that you can play pick and pop. You can go pick and roll. You have different options there. So if he can learn from Porzingis and pick up those tips and kind of play, you can play a consistent style of offense, a consistent role. You don't have to be like, oh, well, here's our plotting post-up guy, or here's our dunker spot guy because he can't stretch the floor. You can play a consistent style for 48 minutes. I think that's important for the Hawks.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of expectations on them going into this season. It's going to be interesting, but they've built a very intriguing team that there's going to be a lot of eyes on. I'm a big Newell fan too, so I think he's going to be able to fit right in. And look, he's found a role for 15 minutes a game. That's kind of perfect for a rookie to develop and watch and learn. So I'm interested to see what he ends up looking like, what that team ends up looking like as well. Let's get away from Summer League for the final thing we want to talk about in today's episode of Locked On NBA Game Night. That is restricted free agency, particularly around Jonathan Kuminga. It's gone quiet on that front. And Mark Stein, in his latest Steinline newsletter with Jake Fisher, said, league sources tell Steinline there's hopes of securing a contract, even a short-term contract that pays at least $25 million a year in average annual salary, whether that's to stay with the Warriors or switch teams via sign-in trade. How does this end with Kuminga? This is going to be one of those things that lingers for a minute. And I have an idea, but it's tough to kind of see where this ends well for him, maybe.
I don't think it ends well for him. And this is a great test. Normally with a situation like this, I would have a good grasp on, like, okay, this is how this scenario plays out. But we're in the second apron era. We're in the new CBA era. And the types of moves that you need to make to get this guy, you can't do the money. Where's the money coming from? So 25 million
cap space right now, and that's Brooklyn, and they're clearly not going to use it on Kuminga. Otherwise, they would have by now.
Right. So no one has $25 million to pay him. So why would the Warriors could be like, we're not paying you that, and he could just sit there and die on the vine and probably take a 1-year deal at a reduced rate and then go into unrestricted free agency next year as maybe like the prize, depending on what Luka Doncic does, as the prize. But this new CBA is changing everything. You can't do a sign and trade. There's no sign and trade possibilities because that hard caps. I believe it hard caps you at the first apron or the
first apron. Yeah. I mean, like Atlanta, you can. Like Atlanta did it with Nickeil Alexander-Walker. So there's ways to do it, right? But it's very difficult. And like a team like the Phoenix Suns aren't going to be able to pull this off, right? You've seen it kind of part of it is also the Golden State Warriors asking for like a first-round pick or a good young player in return for Kuminga. And it's like teams aren't going to do that and then have to pay Kuminga with everything and hard cap themselves the first apron, which like teams aren't always going over. But it's one of the things where, it feels like, as you said, he's going to basically take a 1-year deal. It's probably going to be like a 1+1, and he's going to opt out after 1 year, and who knows what the money is going to be there. Could you see any world where, as we get a little bit later into this, I think it has to happen in like mid-September, could you see some sort of sign and trade for Kuminga in exchange for Lauri Markkanen in some capacity for the Utah Jazz? Because Markkanen doesn't really fit their timeline anymore, and that becomes kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean that would be an option. I think that's it's an intriguing kind of place to.
That's all I
you know,
got.
yeah, no, it's not a bad place to go. And the Jazz are one of the teams that if you get hard capped at the first apron, who cares, right?
Who cares?
You're going to be under the tax anyway. So
Yeah.
now because Bradley Beal is gone, the Suns can be like, hey, we're under the tax anyway. We can do a sign and trade if that's where you want to go. But like also the Suns don't have picks. Like all of their picks are gone, right? So that doesn't really fit what the Warriors are trying to do. And what are the Warriors trying to do actually? Because they have interest in signing Al Horford. That's trying to add to a championship core. You probably need Kuminga to be part of. If you're going to make a run in the West, you kind of
depends on how they want to use him. Which they like, he was getting DMPs basically in the playoffs for him this past year. So it's like, do they even want to pay him? Like
I know, but I still feel like that there's something there. He's got to rise up, unless he's just kind of done there, right? Like this is the tough thing with restricted free agency. It's a lot of venom, a lot of acrimony with between
poisons relationships at times. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Like,
because
he's on a 1-year deal there and he's going to be happy. He's going to sulk the whole season, right? Like that's not going to be good for anybody. So I think the Warriors are playing like slightly too much hardball here. If what they're looking for in return in a signing trade with Sacramento, Chicago's been a team that's been linked to him as well, but they're dealing with Josh Giddey and restricted free agency themselves. And they're like, well, we're not going to pay you because we don't need to. It's a weird situation. They're going to be covering it.
I'm sorry. I'm just saying. I'm fascinated by how restricted free agency is impacted by this new CBA.
We're kind of learning on the fly here. They're going to be covering more of it over at the Locked On NBA Daily podcast as well, if there's any big news when it comes to that. But that's going to do it for us here on Locked On NBA Game Night with Damian Lillard, Summer League, and more on Fridays. I'm your co-host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, and the host of the Locked On Pelicans podcast.
And I'm John Karalis, at John_Karalis on Twitter, host of the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Appreciate y'all watching and listening to us here. We'll be back with y'all next week on Locked On NBA Game Night, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.